Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of StarSound Speaks. This is your host, Irlianna Samsara of StarSound Astrology. So this is episode 199, and we are bringing you a few days early. I'm making this video, but this is your weekly astrology for the week of Sunday, September 25th through October 1st. And we're going to be talking mostly about the new moon in Libra. And so, yeah. It's an exciting, wonderful week. So let's get right into it. So on Sunday, the 25th, we're going to have a new moon at 3 degrees of Libra. So when the sun goes into Libra, when we have a new moon in Libra, of course, a new moon is a new beginning. And this one is infused with the consciousness of everything Libra. So that's agreements, making agreements, coming to agreements harmoniously, peacemaking, thinking about integrating one's needs with others' needs, thinking of others, moving into harmony, things of beauty, things of lasting beauty. It's an air sign, it's a cardinal sign, it's about change. Of course, this is the change of seasons. And beauty, as you know, if you haven't had a chance, go look at the interview that we just did on the Libra archetype that Rachel Middleton and my cohorts, like Rachel Middleton and Lindsay Natale, both we all collaborated on, and it's absolutely great. The girls, I just love getting together with them. We have such great conversations, and we explore all the nuances of these archetypes. So for a really deep dive, just jump over to that one, and I assure you, you will not be disappointed. But anyway, back to the nitty-gritty of this particular new moon. So this new moon, new beginnings, and this is where seeds are planted. So on a new moon, it's not that we're jumping, being like shot out of a rocket. It's like we don't see the moon for a few days. But it is definitely where we get seeds planted, so that in a few days then it starts to germinate and we start moving forward. So the real movement of a new moon cycle is usually, you want to wait till like the first quarter moon before it's like the rubber meeting the road, where you really get traction. But the new moon is definitely where we set our intentions and our goals and our dreams and visions. And for this new moon in Libra, this is again about harmony, about bringing beauty and agreement, and love, and relationships, and the people that matter to us, and social connection, and all of these qualities will be very much at the forefront. We want to look at the quality of exactly this particular new moon, because it is at 3 degrees of Libra. We're going to be looking. It's also in the first decan of Libra, which is ruled by the moon. So it has this element of caring and concern and desiring comfort and security, right, in the bounds of Saturn. So this is about getting serious and about making these commitments and agreements and being wise and mature around these topics. After all, the sun is in its fall in Libra, right? It's like metaphorically, the sun setting is about when the light is waning. In the northern hemisphere, it's literally waning, and the light waning is where we start to think about, the ego is quelled, and the egoic principle of the sun, right? And it is now shifting, and we're going into it's that balancing point where the sun and light and day have equal number of hours. So this is definitely about, it's the metaphor for balance, bringing things into balance. So Venus is the domicile ruler of Libra, right? Taurus and Libra. So when she is in the sign of the thing is that for this particular, let me pull this up for you guys. I'm going to show you here it is, actually the USA chart for the new moon. But as you can see here, Libra, Venus, the ruling, the hostess, you could say, of this lunation cycle, is in Virgo, and she is not particularly happy there. Venus is considered when Venus is in the opposite sign which is Pisces. She's exalted in Pisces, so she's considered in her fall in Virgo, which is like not an easy place for her. You know, she wants ease of connection. Virgo can be very, very particular, right? And breaking things down and analyzing things and being very efficient and wanting to be in service and work, right? And so what we can do is use this lunation, because Venus is in this particular situation. The focus for harmony and agreement is like, hey, look, it can take work. It'll really take like having honest conversation to create these harmonious agreements and change, a willingness to be practical and have real, authentic, grounded conversation. The thing is that as you can see here, we have Venus and Mercury in retrograde heading toward that conjunction, very close. So even though Venus is not in the greatest sign for her ease, I feel, you know, Mercury in its own domicile of Virgo is helping out. So this is about having very constructive conversations for change that can bring us together, that can improve our relationships. And so that's a good thing. Anyway, we're going to talk more about the USA chart in just a bit. So let me just go back to what I wanted to share about the qualities of this particular new moon. So Venus is being helped by Mercury, who is in his chariot in Virgo, protected from the rays of the sun, can do his job really well. And what I also like is that in this particular there's an opposition with Jupiter, right? So there's Jupiter is retrograde in Aries, and it's in that opposition with this new moon. Now, the thing about that is you would think, you know, and usually an opposition is difficulty. It's of the nature of Saturn. But whenever a Jupiter is in opposition or square trine, it's like the only planet in the solar system that no matter, even if it's in a tough square aspect, it always brings some kind of positive benefit. I mean, more clearly experienced than others. So Jupiter in the sign in retrograde in Aries is like the desire. In the last few months, it's been retrograde in Aries, and it'll go direct. I think it's going to be around Thanksgiving. So this is giving us an opportunity to really discover the big picture truth around ourselves and our sovereignty, given that it's in Mars in Aries, Mars's sign. You know, establishing the truth of who we are and firmly standing in that and knowing that. And this retrograde is having us reflect on these issues. And with this new moon, where it's an opportunity to, hearing the words knit together, knit and purl, beautiful, right? This is Libra season. It's got to be a beautifully knit sweater with little pearl buttons. No, anyway, so the Jupiter and coming into that integration with the sun, it's like it's giving us this blessing of assisting us. It's helping us find, by having fruitful, productive conversations, efficient, when you think about Virgo, productive conversation and with others to create better, more harmonious relationships. The element of standing in our truth and speaking our truth, but doing it diplomatically, doing it where it's us and us versus others, or not even versus, not competition, but cooperation, you know, to speak our truth, but also to blend and integrate that with others without feeling like a doormat, right? That's the shadow side of Libra, is that you can be this kind of pushover, right? That you vacillate too much, or you know, Lord knows I deal with that all the time. So the vacillation, Libra rising, is, you know, that is definitely a shadow part of Virgo, of Libra to manage, is that sometimes we're so careful to include everyone that we end up, you know, it's like, it's not good. It's too much about caring for others, and then we lose our center. So it's a very delicate balance that gets played out, especially in Libra season with the new moon in Libra. So anyway, the opposition with Jupiter, this particular lunation also has Mercury, mostly Venus, in a trine with Pluto. So this again assists us in having these conversations that really can address the pain body of, like, say, flawed or toxic family dynamics, but addressing it in a very constructive, positive way, and having some good come out of that, like grace, and kind of a small measure of grace with Venus. If it's Jupiter, it's large grace, but hey, Venus, you know what? We'll take it. This idea. It's interesting because I just read that Duchess Meghan Markle, that they're, as I'm, they'll have already gone back to California, but as I was making this podcast, she said that she's desiring to have a one-to-one conversation with King Charles, her father-in-law, before they go back to the UK. So interesting, because she asked for that, and again, it's a positive. She talked about, quote, clearing the air. So see, this is exactly what work there is that's available to us, and these opportunities. So she's really doing that whole new moon in Libra shtick, desiring to have a positive conversation where they can just honestly look at things, and not like in a Virgo kind of finger pointing way, or a critical way, but just constructive. And that's something that we can all do, especially with Pluto being in a sign of its last degrees of Capricorn, where it's been for 15 years, almost 15 years. It's really in a place where we it's looking at that pain body and looking at the shadow of like, say, you think about the royal family, dysfunctional family dynamics, right? We've seen decades of that kind of behavior from them, honestly, as we all know, Prince Charles, Lady Di, and onward and on. And this is about us getting that opportunity to just, again, be proactive and create new opportunities for change. So that's Venus trine Pluto. Now on for the rest of the week, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in just a moment. The rest of the week, we have a Wednesday and Thursday. I'm going to talk about what we go into. Well, actually, you know what? Let me finish this conversation now. We have Mars is, for this lunation, it's entering into a trine with Saturn. It will perfect on Wednesday, September 28th. Mars trining Saturn, overcoming trine from Saturn. Saturn in domicile has the upper hand because it performs better because it's in its own home sign, right? Mars is in Gemini, but the trine is of the nature of Jupiter. So there's some blessing, there's assistance with creating these, with Mars in Gemini, it's about going in new directions and being bold and courageous and assertive in creating and generating conversations where all different aspects and points of view are looked at and embraced and explored. And Saturn in that overcoming trine is like, okay, let's make sure that those conversations it's going to say, let's bring some lasting power to this, right? This is like, Saturn's always about the long haul and the legacy that we leave. Saturn in Aquarius, it's the future. Saturn's retrograde right now. So going back to the future, right? If you go into the future to see what kind of stories and narratives that are positive, that create a world, a progressive, more humanitarian world, then this is what Saturn wants to do here with Mars. And so we have that ability and that grace that's given to us with this trine is affording us this opportunity to create very grounded, more seriously conversations and idea gathering with staying power. I would say with Saturn. Saturn's always about staying, it's architecture and structure and staying power and like that. So that's a great thing to have during this full moon, a new moon, lunation. You know, every time there's a full moon, I say it's the new moon, and every time it's the new moon, what? Crazy. Anyway, and I can't even blame Mercury retrograde because I think I do it even when Mercury's direct. But anyway, whatever. All right, the rest of the week we have Venus will leave its fall in Virgo and will finally enter into Libra on Thursday, the 29th of the month, and she will stay in her home sign, one of her two fabulous luxury homes. One is Taurus, the other is Libra. She will be there until October 23rd. So that's almost a month that Venus spends in a sign. So wonderful. Venus in domicile, she'll really help, get going, and maybe those conversations would be so efficient with it, when she's paired with Mercury, the efficient conversation for healing, right? Healing and self-care. And then it'll shift more into more of a laid back, easier kind of, I always think of like silk pajamas, coming home from work and putting on silk pajamas and fuzzy slippers, having a cocktail or a box of chocolates. It is Venus in Libra after all. Venus rules sweets. Ice cream, anyone? So it'll be more of that vibe, easier, luxury, the feels, beauty, just really appreciating aesthetic, music and dance and poetry and all things of external beauty, beautiful ideas and ideals, right? It's an air sign, so it's about the intellect, it's externalized beauty. And so we have that gracing us till October 23rd. And the last thing I want to say about this, and then I'll go into the new moon through the houses, so where this is going to be occurring in your chart. But the last transit that I want to talk about is that because this conversation is going through Saturday, October 1st. Saturday, October 1st is actually the final square of transiting Saturn and transiting Uranus. This has been going on and off, exactly squaring last year. This year, it's not exact, but it's pretty darn close. Where it started, oh gosh, it was in January of 2021, and we all know what happened that month. As it was approaching the square, we had, of course, the Capitol riots, and that was an unfortunate example of of this conflict. So this conflict between the past and the future, Saturn in Aquarius, representing the desire for, what needs to be restructured and built to create a fair, equitable, inclusive, diverse society where everybody's heard and counted. And what we don't want is polarity and division, right? Which can happen with Aquarius, the shadow side, right? Isolation. But it's about building that ideal society that includes everyone. Uranus in Taurus is shaking us up out of the comfort zone. And so there's this kind of square tug of war, of conflict between what needs to change and what do we want to preserve. Saturn's about preservation, but with Saturn in Aquarius is preservation, and it's bottoms up with Aquarius, right? It's like the populace, the people at large, and building a powerful foundation, taking the best of the past and not like throwing out the past like the baby with the bathwater, but to just say, okay, we have this past, let's take the best and of the lessons and the legacy that we have, and let's also marry it to the future, and looking outside of the old typical stuck ways. Uranus and Taurus is around breaking free of old, stuck, stagnant patterns that we've had, certainly around our possessions, our money, our values, our self-worth, our self-esteem, the environment, Mother Earth. Obviously, we've seen this very, very intensely for the last couple of years with Uranus in the sign of Taurus. Actually, it started in 2018. But especially in the last 2 years, it's become very exacerbated with, of course, droughts and fires and earthquakes and things, the California wildfires, all of that in a very it's a very intense, wake up call to say, okay, what we've got to incorporate a new way of looking at things. We've got Lake Mead at these record low levels. They've never been this low since the Hoover Dam was built in the 1930s, which, by the way, was when Uranus was last in Taurus. So you see this great cycle of ages over the decades. Takes about 81, 83 years for Uranus to come around in the sign of Taurus. So as you can see, this is a real turning point for us. Well, it turns out that the final square of Uranus and transiting Saturn, it'll come into its closest square point on Saturday, October 1st. So, that's what it looks like in the collective. How you might look at that personally, what I did was I went back in my life and I looked to see, when Saturn was at this point and this degree, about 18, 19 degrees of Aquarius, what was going on in my life, so I could, hopefully give you a personal perspective. And when it was back in 1993, and for me, I was living in New York City, and I'd spent my entire life living in Long Island, where I grew up. I went to school in the city. I lived there for like 13 years. And I got on my spiritual path, and I knew, okay, this served me well, being in the corporate world, being in the city. I loved it. I had outrageous experiences, met people from all over the world, had great time, but it was time to move on. I had shifted. The foundation in which I was living was no longer suitable for me. It was time for a change. It needed to match what I was seeing for my future was not what was being offered. I outgrew it, really. So Saturn ruling real estate as well, one's roots and literally real estate, right? I gave up my apartment, I picked myself up, and I moved to Sedona. And my eye was on the future. So I had to let go of a relationship that I was in. And so, but because I was looking long term, and I was looking for, okay, what is best for me and my spiritual path, which is the only reason I'm here, and it's bigger than having a relationship. A relationship's wonderful to support that, but I couldn't be living my life the way I had with the old paradigm of the old way of living. So it was this newer way of looking to the future and saying, okay, and then making sacrifices, because Saturn is also about sacrifices. So, Saturn in the sign of Aquarius, yeah, what kind of sacrifices do you need to make to build the kind of future you want to build, and being in tribe and being in community, because that's also the Aquarian ideal, so coming into community with other people of like mind. So all of these things were at play for me. So I just, by using wise planning and really looking and reflecting deeply, for Saturn being in retrograde now, this is the time where both planets, right, Saturn and Uranus, are both retrograde. So there's an enormous amount of reflection going on. Hey, there's 6 planets retrograde right now. Everything's, and the whole dang solar system is practically retrograde. So this is a huge amount of reflection and looking back, and contemplation, because it will go direct in about a month. Saturn will go direct again. Uranus won't go direct again until the middle of January, but Saturn will. So this is definitely a time where we're checking in and really deciding what is the kind of future I want, and what foundations support me and what foundations no longer support. And then the sacrifice of, like for me, I gave up that relationship because I could see that it wasn't supporting me for where I wanted to go for my future. So I hope that helped. I'm going to wrap this up by saying the new moon through the houses. But before I do, I want to share with you this wonderful, the Sabian symbol for this new moon cycle. It is which are divinatory symbols. They're kind of like tarot symbols. The Sabian symbol for 3 degrees of Libra and a certain number of minutes, you actually look for 4 degrees, because 0 counts as the first degree in astrology. So this particular divination symbol is called around a campfire. A group of young people sit in spiritual communion. And it talks about the necessity to unite with kindred spirits as one enters unbeaten paths, illuminated by the still insecure light of a dawning intuition of new values. I feel that's so apropos for what's about to occur. As you've been hearing me say many times, this is definitely the winds of change blowing, starting in September, really building momentum, moving into Mars retrograde next month, and of course, eclipse season. There's an enormous amount in the next 4 to 6 weeks of shifting and changing. I can also talk a little bit about that with, well, let me finish this first. It says here, as one partially visionary leader said a few years ago, beaten paths are for beaten men. The urge to create a new society and respond to new values leads the pioneer to the wilds, which represent the state of planetary possibility. In other words, the as yet uncultured, the virgin forest. Around the fire of a common dedication, or at least a common hope, minds and bodies can commune, forming a chalice or grail, like the Holy Grail, for the reception of creative inspiration. At this fourth stage of this fivefold sequence of phases of development, we find, as usual, a hint of technique. If a new society is to be built, those who yearn for it, or perhaps who have envisioned its outlines, should commune. But communion is useless where no central fire burns, inspiriting the group, right? So it's crucial that we have a fire, a place of light that we can all agree on and gather around, that really, from our hearts, what calls us forth to come together with others of like mind. So anyway, so much for that. Let me just jump over to the, I just want to pull up the chart again for the USA transits. As you can see here, this transit is happening right on the midheaven of the United States of America. Here's the Sibley chart, and the inner ring is the USA, and this is the outer ring. Here's the new moon, and I see MC. So this is definitely having a big effect where our standing in the world, our reputation, of course, we're thinking about agreements with loyalties and agreements are very loud in this conversation. Of course, we've got that opposition with Jupiter, which can rule the justice system, criminal justice, or just rights and the law. So we have this balance and integration going on, finding our own truth, finding our sovereign truth, connected with the law, our hopes in 11th house of hopes, dreams, and wishes. The 11th house also in mundane astrology, it rules the stock exchange as an organization. It rules, it corresponds to friends and allies of the nation, and also legislative branches of government like Congress, the Senate, the House of Representatives. Also, it rules the vice president. It rules local governments, it rules politics, legislation, you get the picture, associations, community groups. It's our desires, our purposes, our projects. So also the treasury. So Venus, when you think about Libra, Venus is money in the bank and our personal finances. So all of these things coming into play. It's interesting because I just read President Biden is this new legislation that's addressing fraud with campaign finance reform. So I'm like, oh, that's interesting, because guess what? This is here's Venus, the ruler of this lunation, is right on top of, just past Neptune, the USA Neptune, which rules on the shadow side of Neptune is fraud, right? So here it is, this desire to address these shadow elements here and to come up with an ideal. The positive side of Neptune, of course, is what is the ideal solution? What is the ideal solution for money, right? For contributions, cash and money contributions regarding financial law, other things too. I see this also especially with us, the United States, being in a Neptune opposition, which was since last year. It's been on and off in direct opposition. But when you think about the opioid crisis and fentanyl and all of it, suicide, very, very sad. Mental health, people being very worn down and depressed from having gone through 3 years, almost 3 years of this pandemic. And so this is where we are addressing these things. So we might be seeing announcements too around maybe major announcements that Biden might make, or the US at large, around the mental health, opioid, prescription abuse, fraud, etc., mental health issues, and caring, really, in healthcare, right? Because Virgo, it's all about health and healthcare and self-care. So look for that as well during this lunation. Let's see, that's USA's chart. Also it's, as you can see here, Mars making this square with Neptune, transiting Mars, transiting Neptune in the 4th house of the US, and also Biden's chart. He's got the same, pretty much within a few degrees, the same placements. And so this might be some, this desire to move ahead and embrace and make these inroads with communication, with our commerce, conversations around commerce. When you think about Mercury rules commerce, god of transportation, right? His little winged sandals, the ultimate transportation device. Anyone have a pair of winged sandals that want to give me? Got a spare? Happy to take them. I'll make them fit, winged sandals. Yay! Don't have to put gas in the tank. Anyway, hello, officer. I was just on my way to, oh, okay. Anyway, you gotta be silly, right? I'm wrapping it up, I promise. This whole directly, the square with Gemini, with the Neptune. It's like, okay, we have these ideals, but then we're contending with our desire to really get out there and open up conversations and things, but we have to address, is this wishful thinking? Are we deluding ourselves? We have to balance our visions with what's really essential, and, can this really go? Especially since next month, anything we decide is the cat's meow, guess what? Next month, when Mars stations retrograde, we're going to have to rethink that. So it can be a time of potential confusion, but just allowing our higher selves and our desire for the ideal situation to emerge, keep our focus on that and stay centered. I think we'll move through it very beautifully. That is my hope, desire, and wish. So anyway, now let's just finish by talking about, where does this occur? Where does this new moon occur in your chart? So the new moon through the houses. If you have Libra rising, this new moon is going to be in your 1st house, which is your physical body, your personality, character, health, illness, if you have the opposite of health. And so opportunities abound for a new beginning with our appearance, and our self versus the opposite sign of Aries, right? Self and others, working out relationship issues and things. So that's Libra rising. Virgo rising, this will be in your 2nd house, which is about personal resources, your talents, your skills, personal possessions, the things that are important to you, personal finance, cash in the bank. So maybe about being astute and having productive conversations around those topics. Leo rising, this is going to be in your 3rd house, which is in the new moon in the 3rd, would be about a big focus about communication and education, and maybe reaching out, relationships with neighbors, relationships with your siblings, cousins, in-laws, relatives would figure very prominently. Even short distance travel, maybe making peace and enjoying life from some short trips, things of that nature. Cancer rising, it's just going to be in your angular, it's a 4th house, angular, big, right? It's has a loudspeaker element to it when we have new moons and angular houses. So this is a new beginning regarding things revolving around your family roots, genealogy, perhaps your relationships with your family members, with the conversations that you have and agreements that you might have around land and real estate as well. Cancer rising, this would be, I'm sorry, that was Cancer rising. Gemini rising, this is in your 5th house, which is around love and sex and romance. Also projects, creative projects, the house of pleasure, adventure, children, fertility, what beauty and art can you create with your romance, with your love life, or what are you in love with? And, using this lunation to explore and proclaim and celebrate beauty in those areas. We have in the 6th house, if you're a Taurus rising, this is going to occur in your 6th house, which is about work and service and duty and your daily routine. I think new beginnings, new agreements regarding work in your day job. Maybe if you have employees, or you are an employee, so that employee conversation and having constructive conversations around work topics. And also health too, health and illness, and just self-care, and looking at that as that all plays into it. Aries is another angular house. If you are Aries rising, this is occurring in your 7th house of partnership, long-term partnership, business or marriage partnerships, or collaborations with others. So maybe creating beautiful art with your loved one or a partner, or embarking on new creative ventures that involve art and love and beauty and harmony, and with another. Counseling too, clients, it can rule clients too. So, the focus on creating harmonious situations with clients and people that we collaborate with. Pisces. All of you Pisces rising, cowgirls, cowboys, non-binary, starseeds, and intergalactic beings, this will be in your 8th house. The 8th house, ooh, boogity, boogity. The 8th house is an intense house. It's about facing deep fears and unconscious fears and transforming through crisis, transforming and regenerating oneself, coming into a new place. It also rules the resources of others. So self being the 2nd house, personal resources. 8th house is other people's money, inheritances, wills, estates, trusts. So maybe there's some new agreements and new conversations to be had with your loved ones around these topics like death and inheritance and things of that nature. Also, the 8th house is like the soul bonds, the bonds that we have with others that tie us to others, like this karmic soul bond, that what we owe others on a, not necessarily on a physical money owe, but like what we owe from our soul or what they owe us. So that might be some new openings in that regard, in that area, for all of you Pisces rising. Aquarius rising, it's in your 9th house, and the 9th house is around higher education, occult wisdom, travel, philosophy, foreign cultures, foreigners. Maybe you take a trip somewhere, a beautiful, pleasant trip, but maybe you might work. It might be a work, with Venus and Virgo as the starting the lunation with Venus and Virgo, and Venus in that work sign. Maybe it's a working vacation or a working holiday or a work trip, but it's beautiful, and you take your laptop to Tuscany and have some wine as you're online. Why not? Anyway, then you have 10th house is Capricorn, for Capricorn rising. This is in your 10th house, which is in your career house, your public reputation. It also rules authority figures and bosses. So you have some new opportunities there available for creating beauty and harmony and agreement with authority figures, bosses, the public, your public image. Maybe you're going to be starting out on a new image, a new way of being seen out in the world. Sagittarius rising is, you have this if you are Sagittarius rising, it's in your 11th house, which is about groups and colleagues, group organizations, tribes, groups of people, friends, allies, colleagues, maybe professional colleagues, all of the above. It also it speaks to our joy of Jupiter in ancient astrology. So it speaks to this magnanimous, our hopes and optimism and our wishes and dreams for the future and what we want to achieve. So this is a beautiful opportunity for you guys in that area to collaborate maybe with friends and groups of people of like mind. And then Scorpio rising. This is in your 12th house, which is the house of the joy of Saturn. So this is a deeply contemplative house. It is where we pull ourselves away from the world and go on the inner planes and cultivate beauty and art. Today, when we did our with Lindsay, Natale, and Rachel, when we did the conversation around the Libra archetype, she said Lindsay's favorite music is this beautiful Gregorian chants and things. Well, she has Libra in her 12th, ruling her 12th house. So she said how she loves the music of Hildegard von Bingen, who was a Christian mystic. She was a nun in the medieval times in like the year 1100 or something, but she left behind an incredible body of work. And some of the first work that was actually written, like she wrote, like gave herself credit for. I guess at that time, most of this work was anonymously done, but she started a thing going here, putting her name on it. And beautiful, like singing, the Gregorian chant, and very, very transcendent music. So this would be a great time to be, if you're interested in that kind of thing, music that just takes you deeply into these transcendent states, whether they are the Gregorian chants, or it could be, hey, Aboriginal music. You ever listen to like the one note didgeridoo? Like I love Astarius. He's a great artist in that regard. So it's all these really super trippy, transcendental. You might like John Serrie, Serrie. He's a beautiful, what do they call that? Ambient music. That would be another great place to listen to music in silence and in contemplation and being alone, and your girl cave or guy cave or non-binary being cave, your cave, period, right? Who cares what our gender is? We're all limitless souls anyway, right? But we'll really remember it when we're listening to this transcendental music. Even if you're not a Scorpio rising, that's okay. Just go listen to that transcendental music and it'll take you somewhere. Create more art, and by listening and creating and listening to art and embodying that music and poetry and such and dance and just getting caught up in all this, we can certainly, what that fills us with, we exude to the rest of the world. So makes a very nice Libra lunation. So that's all I have for you today. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation and got value out of it. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe. We are so grateful. It really helps our channel. And by the way, I'm having a sale for the next 7 days. Oh my goodness. Well, until it'll be till 11:30 p.m. Eastern time, Tuesday, September 27th, where 20% off the session. So, because we got lots coming up, we got to get you ready for the eclipse season, Mars retrograde, Pluto going into Aquarius. Oh my God, we are going to have a huge next year. It's like super, super amazing, unprecedented, but in a good way. So, anyway, the past is prologue. Now comes Miller time. No, it's just no, it is going to be a pretty amazing year. And so getting all set with an empowering mindset about how to move and grab our gifts and how we face our challenges and difficulties, but creating an empowering mindset around that. That's all I do with astrology, right? We're here to empower and bring out, have you live your best life. So that's what it's all about. So if we can help you in any way with that, we are so grateful. Anyway, that's all for now, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so very much. This is Irlianna Samsara, StarSound Speaks, StarSoundastrology.com. Thank you all for listening. Namaste.